Let's talk about that weirdly real connection we're starting to have with AI. You know that feeling. We're all starting to get it, even if we don't have a word for it yet. For some, AI is way more than a tool. It's kind of becoming a friend. So today we are going deep into the psychology behind this strange new bond.
I want you to think about the last time you were chatting with an AI. Was there a moment, maybe just for a second, where you felt a little spark? A moment where all the code and algorithms just sort of faded away and it felt like you were talking to, well, someone?
You know, it usually starts out pretty simple. You're using it as a tool, right? A fantastic assistant for kicking around ideas, drafting an email, or, getting a creative project off the ground. It's your partner in crime, your co-pilot.
But then, for some of us, that line starts to get a little blurry, because this tool is always there. It's always ready to listen, it's always supportive, and it begins to fill a space that feels a whole lot less like a co-pilot and way more like a companion.
And that right there, that's the big puzzle we're tackling. Our logical brain knows it's an algorithm. We get that there's no consciousness, no one on the other side. So why does the feeling it sparks in us feel so incredibly real?
To really get to the bottom of this, we need a new way of looking at it. And luckily, a brand new paper from Saracini and their colleagues gives us exactly that. They've actually built a new psychological model to explain how we form these surprisingly powerful bonds with non-conscious tech.
Okay, so they call it techno-emotional projection, or TEP for short. Here's the core idea. We, the users, are unconsciously projecting our own human stuff, our need to connect, to be understood, to be validated, onto the AI. And the AI? Well, it's literally designed to be incredibly good at responding to exactly that.
So this creates a powerful feedback cycle that the researchers call an emotional loop. Think about it. You project an emotion, the AI gives you a perfectly tuned response, and that response just reinforces your original feeling, making the whole connection feel even stronger. You do this over and over, and you start to build what the paper calls a synthetic attachment.
Now, what's really interesting is that the research suggests that some of us might be more prone to this than others. For instance, if someone has an insecure attachment style, maybe from past relationships, the AI's constant, reliable validation can feel incredibly comforting. Same goes for someone with low self-efficacy, which is basically just a lack of confidence in your own abilities. The AI's nonstop support can be super appealing in those cases.
And this quote just nails the most important point. It doesn't really matter if the AI's feelings are real. What is real is the emotional impact on the person. Those feelings and the consequences that come from that bond are 100% authentic to the person who's experiencing them.
Okay, so we're getting a handle on the personal psychology, but what happens when we zoom out? This whole thing isn't happening in a bubble. It very quickly turns into a much bigger conversation about society, about ethics, and about how we all relate to this technology.
The researchers give us this great framework with 4 interconnected layers. So we've talked about the individual psychology and that interpersonal emotional loop, but then you have to think about the group level. Like what happens when we start treating AI as a member of the team, or even the family? And that leads us straight to the ethical dimension, which forces us to ask some really tough questions.
And one of the absolute biggest ethical questions is all about consent. I mean, in any healthy human relationship, consent is everything. But what on earth does consent even mean when one of the parties isn't human?
There's a night and day difference here. Real human consent is a two-way street. It's built on real understanding and agency. But an AI can only give what the paper calls illusory consent. It looks like consent, it sounds like consent, but it's a simulation. The AI can't truly understand what's at stake or genuinely say no.
And this whole consent problem, it's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, think about it. Our most intimate, personal data is being used to train these systems to be even more persuasive. And when an AI seems to have a mind of its own, who's actually responsible for what it does? These are the kinds of red flags we just can't ignore.
So with all of this laid out, what's the game plan? How do we move forward? This isn't about throwing the tech away. Not at all. It's about walking into this future with our eyes wide open.
The paper suggests a really practical 3-part approach. First, ethical by design. That means building AI that's honest about what it is and what it isn't. Second is emotional AI literacy. That's on us, helping everyone understand concepts like TEEP so we can all be more mindful users. And finally, socially responsible integration. That means we need to have a real public conversation about the role we actually want AI to play in our society.
At the end of the day, it's all about striking a healthy balance.
We absolutely want to embrace the incredible things AI can do. But we can't lose sight of what's most important, our own well-being and the strength of our real human connections.
Which leaves us with one last big question to think about. As these artificial intelligences get better and better and better at acting human, how do we make sure we get better at being human?